the community safety group that he launched in 1979. Curtis is also a longtime radio personality and an advocate on public safety issues. Please welcome Curtis Sliwa.
First, I want to thank all of you for coming here this morning. As you can see, I'm not wearing my traditional red beret, and I'll explain momentarily. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a time machine trip, then to now. Last night, I was fortunate enough, my wife Nancy, who's an e-attorney, took me to the Yankee game. I hadn't been to the new Yankee Stadium in quite some time. I am a preservationist in many ways, and I love the old stadium. But it harkened me back because I felt we were lucky charms last night when Aaron Judge hit that 3-run homer and led the comeback of the Yankees 2-1. Hopefully we take out Toronto. But in 1977, I was running a McDonald's in a high-crime area of the Bronx. The Bronx was burning. It was massive flight. In the 70s, 1 million people had already picked up and left New York City, many of them from the Bronx. And they went into nearby New Jersey and Westchester and Connecticut. They couldn't get out quick enough, but some on fixed income. All they did was put more bars on the windows, locks on the doors, and nightlife ceased to exist as a result of the Son of Sam in 76. So there I was. I hadn't put on a red beret yet, managing a very large McDonald's. And while conducting the shift, that was the night that Reggie Jackson, on 3 consecutive pitches, hit home runs. And the Yankees beat Tommy Lasorda and the Dodgers 4-2. But a very famous statement was made on that national broadcast by Howard Cosell as the cameras pointed in the distance to buildings that were on fire. They had been torched. The Bronx was burning. And Howard Cosell said at that moment, you know, George Steinbrenner Sr., owner of the most famous franchise in sports in the world, was thinking of moving to the Meadowlands. I remember I stopped in fear, fright, and hysteria and said the only thing that we ever moved to the Meadowlands was garbage and the bodies of dead members of organized crime. And that's when I began my movement of Improve, Don't Move. And it started to move in the development of cleaning up the streets and, most importantly, patrolling the trains and the streets in that red beret. Because we were under fiscal constraint. The Financial Control Board had been set up in 1975 by Governor Kerry. It was perilous times. We were on the brink of fiscal dissolvency, and I believe we're moving in that direction now. Felix Roatan of the bankers and Victor Gottbaum, who represented the unions, pooled their resources to keep the city afloat. I knew Victor later on in life, and he explained to me how difficult the process was. And a brand new mayor, Ed Koch, came in, and now he had restrictions on how he could spend money. Imagine, politicians with restrictions on how to spend money. Something you all have to do in business, everybody has to do in our household. Federal government doesn't, 37 trillion, we keep printing money. But now the city had to actually declare how it was spending every nickel, dime, and penny. And remember, there were draconian cuts in police, firefighters, social workers, educators. And it also led up to the debates of 1977 featuring another Cuomo, a much better Cuomo, Mario Cuomo. It was Ed Koch, the Democratic nominee, versus Mario Cuomo, the liberal. Barry Farber, the talk show host, who actually had lost to Bella Abzug in a congressional run the year before, and Roy Goodman, who was the heir to the Ex-Lax fortune, Republican state senator of the Upper East Side, who was a Rockefeller liberal Republican. We had 12 debates. Gabe Pressman, the dean of the News Corps, hosted many of them. And I'll never forget the moment that I was watching in my apartment in the Bronx, and Ed Koch turned to Mario Cuomo and said, of course we have to make cuts because we will fiscally dissolve. We're under the Financial Control Board. And Mario, the true liberal that he was, said no cuts. We cannot make any cuts in the budget. Well, luckily Ed Koch went on and operated with those restrictions. So now, the here and now, right across the street, just to give you an idea of the direction I'm going, I have led with my wife the movement to remove the horse carriage industry. And there are drivers there who depend on that for their livelihood, and replace it, as has been done around the world, with electric carriages so that they continue to earn a living. There are 180,000 drivers in New York City now who are in perilous times. They are fearful of these driverless cars that the Adams administration is doing a test with. Imagine 180,000 men and women, whether they're Uber drivers, many of you use them, Lyft, or yellow cabs, who are fearful that they will have no alternative income. And as we're moving, they won't. Then I deal with my wife, Nancy, who's an e-attorney, a millennial, and I talk with her and her friends, many of them who believed in the American dream. Go 4 years education. She went to Stony Brook, went to Brooklyn Law, got her law degree like many of her friends. Some of them are CPAs, some of them are financial analysts, some of them are lawyers like herself. And the threat of AI, artificial intelligence, in the business community, they're saying, you know, it's coming, there's nothing you can do. It'll actually create jobs. Create jobs? You better tell the millennials and the Gen Zers that, because they're in fear that the American dream that they were promised is dissolving right in front of them, because they followed the route to be able to own their own home, their own car, be able to live in an apartment by themselves instead of having dormitory-style living while making $155,000 a year with 3 other roommates, very much like it was for them in college. And all of that has to be addressed. And it's really not. It's sort of, well, AI is coming. Well, AI is coming. By 2030, we will have to double the electricity output. Right now, we're suffering with extraordinary electricity rates, courtesy of Andrew Cuomo, who took Indian Point offline. That was 25% of our electricity, with no alternative, no natural gas. So now when you look at average ratepayers, whether you're in business or you're homeowners, skyrocketing rates of water and sewage, fees and fines. I'm the only candidate who says we've got to across the board cut the taxes, or the flight will continue, corporate flight, and then we have to maintain our workers, especially those who are trained. They're also fleeing. We got to cut the income tax. I know I have to deal with the state on that. We have to cut the corporate tax. I know I have to deal with the state. But we can deal with the property tax, which the city controls. And there are no efforts to do that. I haven't heard that from any of my adversaries, Zoran or Andrew Cuomo. Secondarily, we have to, and I've been advised by the 2 best in the business of knowing how to run a budget and also how to run a business and run government. Larry Kudlow and his economic advisors are on my team, and former Governor Pataki, who both Democrats and Republicans acknowledge had a great job that he did in 12 years. We got to cut this budget, $118 billion budget, $41 billion alone for the Department of Education, $42,000 per student, 100,000 less students enrolled, 1/3 of truants every day. Average 4th grader, 2/3 of them cannot read, write, or do math at grade level. We have 200 schools with less than 200 students. There's mayoral control, but it's Michael Mulgrew, the union leader, who controls how these schools operate. I would conflate them. And we got to cut that bureaucracy. If you go to Tweed Courthouse, an appropriate place, the home of Tammany Hall for the Department of Education, you have 13 deputy chancellors, 50 department heads. When you talk to the principals in the school, as I do, who hire the staff and now hire the teachers, they don't know who those deputy chancellors are. They don't even know who the department heads are. Cut at the top so that we can get more money in the classroom. Teachers are still paying out of their pocket for basic supplies. That's one agency of many that I will cut. Bob Holden, who leads Democrats for Sliwa, has been a great councilman for 8 years. He's term limited, but he was a teacher for 40 years and a civic leader. So I have a team of competent men and women. I'm not omnipotent, like many of the candidates claim to be. I know I will have to rely on the best men and women available, both from the corporate sector and those who have been great civil servants who have never been elevated.
Mr.
This
Sliwa.
will be an administration that recognizes new ideas, new concepts, and incredibly what we have to do
We're right at the end
avoid
of our
the
time, sir.
implementation of the financial control board that already exists, but it's in mothballs. Cut taxes across the board. Cut the spending in government. None of my opponents have even suggested that. In fact, one, Andrew Cuomo, sounded just like
Mr.
his
Sliwa,
father Mario.
why don't you come on over here? We're at the end of our time.
1977.
Okay. We went a little over here, so we'll get right started. Nick, I think you're jumping in with the first question.
Mr. Sliwa, thanks for being here. Our first question is just about your candidacy overall. You're under a lot of pressure from the business community to withdraw from the race since your campaign makes it more likely that Zohran Mamdani will win, just doing the math. So why are you staying in the race given how strongly you're criticizing Mamdani's policies?
You know, it's interesting. Why don't I drop out of the race? It was June 24th when Cuomo lost Zohran Mamdani and two on the top, lost by 13%. 2 months before, the polls were saying he was going to have a coronation, right? He was ahead 40%. I'm going to trust the polls. And I was being told, "Oh, you got to drop out and back Eric Adams. Eric, he's the savior." A guy was so corrupt, campaign financial crimes. He should have been in jail with Bobby Menendez, Goldbar Menendez, but the Trump administration saved him. So I was to drop out then. How would that have worked out when we saw last Sunday before he fled to Albania that he was dropping out? What an idiot I would have been. And many of you were telling me I should have dropped out, right? I am the only mainstream other candidate other than Zohran. I am the Republican candidate. I also have an independent line, first ever, protect animals, no-kill shelters, put animal abusers in jail. I have raised double the amount of Andrew Cuomo from city residents, 15,000, average donation 129. I have more money than Andrew Cuomo. I'm going to drop out? You're all business people. Does that make any sense? How about letting the people make the determination on November 4th, right? Vote. Vote. Get the vote out.
Sounds like you're still considering. On public safety, you've staked your whole career on public safety. Can you say what's missing from the ways that Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani talk about public safety?
Well, just the other day, I think we can all agree, whether you agree with his politics or not, Rudy Giuliani was the best law and order mayor we had. He inherited a city in 1993, 2,000 murders a year, 10,000 unsolved shootings. And when it came to public safety, he's deemed me his apprentice, because I really was. I learned so much from Rudy and his staff at that time that put into place accountability in the police department and drove the crime down and made New Yorkers feel safe. Prior to that, they were talking about dividing up the city into 5 separate cities, that it was unmanageable and the crime was overwhelming. If you don't deal with the crisis of public safety, then you can't retain your workers. This is a debate cycle amongst the three of us who remain that has been void of discussing women as victims. My wife brought that to everybody's attention. She did my first TV commercial. First time in my life I ever kept my mouth shut. There was nothing that I could say. And she pointed out, you're in the subways, you're in the streets, you're being perved on, sexually harassed. They have this new term, random attacks. What do you mean a random attack? They're targeting women. Women are the majority of the workforce. They become the majority in some places managers. Nightlife cannot survive. They own restaurants, bars, and nightclubs. They manage them. They work there, and they tell me, I can't afford to keep taking yellow cabs, Ubers, and Lyfts. I feel unsafe in New York City. If nothing more, we have to protect the women who are like Bambi in the middle of hunting season wearing an orange fluorescent vest while the hunters are training down their Winchester double-barrel shotguns on them. Talk to the women. Stop just talking to men, and you'll know they don't feel safe.
Can we just refocus on policy a little bit? What's missing from the
Sure.
ways?
In the subways, of which I'm the only candidate in the subways every day, even with the threats against me lately. For the first time in my life, I've had armed guards with me. And I'm the guy that was shot 5 times on the orders of John Gotti Sr. to John Gotti Jr. and the Gambino crime family. Never had armed guards. But I still go on the subways. And what we have to do there is take the uniformed transit police and put them on the moving trains. They're on the platforms. They're up near the turnstiles, and they're watching the Irish sweepstakes. Men and women going under the turnstile, over the turnstile, through the emergency gate. Citizens Budget Commission said we lost $1 billion in various fare evasion just last year alone. We're going to stop the fare evasion. We're going to ticket them. We're going to arrest them. I pay. Everybody pays. You have reduced fare. There's all different ways we can help the poor and the indigent, but that has to stop. And you have to have the police officers going up and down the moving trains as they used to. Most of the problems are on the moving trains. Do you really think somebody's going to get off on a platform and go looking for a police officer to deal with the problem? They're stuck on the train with the violators, the emotionally disturbed, the homeless who are acting up. That all has to be addressed. The homeless come off. We put them in safe shelters because they're not safe now. I've been in half of them. And we take the emotionally disturbed and put them in the state hospitals, of which Andrew Cuomo, when he came in, had 40,000 beds. He made draconian cuts. There were only 4,000. So he's part of the problem. No cash bail. Zoran is all into that. They are the candidates who favor the violators. I am the candidate who protects the victims. That's how you can differentiate those two and me.
So let's switch gears to something that's important to this audience in housing and property taxes. So another question from Jim Whalen at Rebney. What would you say to mom and pop landlords facing double-digit cost increases and foreclosure risk?
The mom and pop shops, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Landlords.
I'm very, very familiar with that in the outer boroughs. But also, ever since this additional tack of congestion pricing, a complete disaster. Have you walked down the side streets? Have you walked down the main thoroughfares? Across the street from City Hall itself, 9 small shops that were run by merchants for many years are now closed, and they put this brown paper wrap on it that we used to wrap our books in public school with when you couldn't afford the high-priced wrap. It looks chintzy. It looks bad. Anybody walking up and down is saying New York City is in decline. And when I ask the merchants time and time again, why are you closing? They say, we don't have enough foot traffic. And we're constantly being taken advantage of by the shoplifters who come in and out with an easy pass, and my margins are so small, I just can't do it. Then you go into the outer boroughs, it's a complete catastrophe. They employ 1 million people in the small businesses of New York City. 1 million New Yorkers get their gainful employment in small businesses. And they're closing up for a variety of reasons. The fees, the fines, the property tax. Many times the only reason you can stay in business is you actually own the building. They've raised it 20%. I'm going to cut that property tax. That's one thing that a mayor has control of, is the property tax, and it's outrageous. 20% in the outer boroughs, small property owners who have maybe 2, 3, 4 family homes. I think the corporate rate is about 11%. And you say to yourself, and all it keeps doing is escalating, which is driving the fear, fright, hysteria out of our city and to other areas where you can still run a business and not have to worry about being taxed from the cradle to the grave, which is what we're doing now.
Thanks. A question on housing. You have opposed City of Yes and the housing-related charter amendments, which would, according to many experts, speed up the development of new housing. So without those tools, how would you make it easier to build affordable housing?
Well, I am the only person running for mayor who says, obviously, vote for me down the Republican line, vote straight Republican on the front, and on the back, vote no on all the initiative and referendums. These initiative and referendums were put together by Eric Adams and his appointees of charter revision. People who testified 2 years in a row wanted Sanctuary City to be voted on. Now, I'm opposed to Sanctuary City, but I would say I would follow whatever the dictates of the residents of the city are. And boy, that would have really brought out a tremendous vote on both sides. Eric Adams wouldn't allow it. And so he knew he wasn't going to run. He knew, he foresaw that he would be one and done. So he decided Eric Adams gone wild. And this is the City of Yes on steroids. He wants to eliminate the local city council person. You don't have to deal with her or him. Zoning restrictions. What zoning restrictions? Community board. I remember I was in 4th grade, PS 114, Alan Topol, my best teacher ever, when we actually had required civics courses, which we don't now, American history and current events. I have 3 sons in the public school system. They're not being taught any of that. And Alan Topol said then, Mayor Robert Wagner created community boards to give more control in the outer boroughs and the residential communities. So I am opposed to the city of yes that would destroy the residential makeup, especially of the outer boroughs. I am a preservationist in many ways, which clearly these 2 candidates are not. Andrew Cuomo is in the back pockets of the developers and realtors as his the predecessor Eric Adams was when they were playing Mario Brothers, going back and forth with their millions, trying to determine who can beat Zoran Mondani. You need to listen to people in the outer boroughs. Yes, we need affordable housing. Stay out of the parks, stay out of the wetlands. There's a place to build affordable housing, but you have to go through the regimen that needs to be addressed. You can't just come into neighborhoods, put up a 40-story apartment building, no parking, by the way, no capital improvements in the area, and nobody consults the community at all. Vote no, straight down, on all the initiative and referendum ballot items.
Can I just follow up on that? You said City of Yes should have been put to the voters, but these charter amendments would be put to the voters, but you're supporting the lawsuit that would knock them off the ballot. So why do you not trust voters?
Well, because of the way the wording is. The wording is very confusing. By the way, my allies, Adrian Adams in the city council that is predominantly DSA, liberal, progressive, and Democrats, and members of the Common Caucus. So Curtis Sliwa is allied with the predominantly Democratic city council, which shows that I would be able to work with the city council. Eric Adams couldn't. We know Adrian Adams was the real mayor. And Bill de Blasio, he only spent half a day destroying this city. I describe Zoran Mondani as Bill de Blasio on steroids.
So just staying with this for one more minute, though, I don't think you actually addressed how would you actually make it easier to build affordable housing in New York?
Well, number one, there are all the regulations, there's the bureaucracy, Department of Buildings, and I even told Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor and Bloomberg, the most inefficient of all the agencies. They're never there to help you with the paperwork. In fact, sometimes they show up when the quota is imposed, and there are quotas for every agency that can write tickets. $1 billion of tickets are built into the budget. How do I know that? I lived for 13 years with Melinda Katz when she was the city councilwoman in charge of land use. She became borough president. She's now the Democratic DA. We've raised 2 great sons. And I would question her. And she would say, oh, yeah, the bureaucracy is so in place. You would think that socialism already existed in New York City when you're dealing with the Department of Buildings. That would be all cut. If you have a vital project to an area, affordable housing is very vital. There are places it could be put, but the Department of Buildings is oftentimes your enemy, whether you're making changes in your existing occupancy or you're trying to build a new facility.
So let's switch gears again. There's only about 8 weeks between election and inauguration, and if you get in as mayor, how would you recruit, a top professional staff for your administration?
Already doing that behind the scenes, because some of them are Democrats. They don't want to wear a scarlet letter right now until they see the outcome of the election. But many of them I'm friends with. And many of them have been great civil servants. When you're a civil servant, you're not in it for the money. You're in it for the love of what you do. These are men and women mostly, many who are retired, who actually went to public high schools here in the city, some who moved away, some who've remained here, because that's part of my goal, improve, don't move. Retain what we have and retain the workers from fleeing. And they've agreed that if I become the next mayor, they will join Larry Kudlow and his economic experts. They will join Governor Pataki. They will join Bob Holden and others, Democrats for Sliwa, in helping us put together a staff of not just commissioners and deputy commissioners, but also advisors who can guide me. Because, again, I think I'm the first person ever to run for mayor to say I'm omnipotent. Not. They all act like they know. I've seen the staff does 97% of the work. You need to know that. I learned that from Melinda Katz. 97% of the work. They give them the cue cards because the elected officials are too busy on their cell phones shaking all of you down for political contributions. They get up there to the podium. They read off the cue cards. You can even tell. They don't even know what they're talking about. I'm going to allow the men and women who actually did the heavy lifting, who do all the work, to get up at the podium, to speak about something that they are passionate about, that they know in and out. And all I'm going to do is say, yep, and I'm signing off on that. Now, amazing. Give credit where credit is due. None of you would be successful in business if it was a one-man or one-woman operation. It's your staffing. It's the people who put together the programs that you need here and now and in the future. And that's what I'm going to do in City Hall. Bloomberg came closest. He delegated.
So who are some of the folks, though, that you're talking to? Can you share that with us? Like, who are the people that you're considering?
Well, I already done that. Governor Pataki, who is a better governor than him? I think Democrats and Republicans can agree with that. There was no chaos. There was no corruption for 12 years. Larry Kudlow, you all know how esteemed he is. He's worked on cutting budgets, and he's also worked on cutting taxes. And Bob Holden, who is an expert on education. Now, there are others. I'll give you Assemblyman Jamie Williams was a Democrat. To give you an idea, she announced at one of our rallies against migrant shelters that she was supporting me for mayor. Oh, I think that woman has to go into the political protection program now. The Democrats are like, yeah, go ahead, Jamie. Why don't you move to Florida, right? They make lives for people who are Democrats impossible. And let's face it, the mass majority of people that would be assisting me are Democrats.
Right. She's supporting you, you mentioned, but is she actually considering working with you?
Well, no, she's an assemblywoman, and we need her, obviously, upstate to represent the constituents of an area that I grew up in, Canarsie, Brownsville, Brooklyn, those areas, Marine Park, and Mill Basin.
Thanks. You just mentioned Mayor Bloomberg. He was obviously the last Republican mayor that New York had. Would you model your approach on him, or would you differ in any notable ways?
I loved walking around the bullpen at City Hall. Michael would say, go out and get a bag of potato chips. I'd say, Michael, that has salt in it. Oh, it's okay. And I'd say, because Rudy, who I was at City Hall with, micromanaged everything. Oh, he was a micromanager. Bloomberg would say, no, talk to my commissioner, talk to my deputy commissioners. The only time I need to talk with them is if there's a problem and it's behind closed doors. There's nothing public. We try to iron out our differences. If we see things two different ways, they can go their way. I go back to what I believe is the best form of government. I would say that's what I would be doing, delegating. But also the other thing I would do is I would strengthen the Department of Investigation. Eventually, I would have an independent, autonomous group of many of these prosecutors who lost their job when Eric Adams was freed by the Department of Justice. Most of these men and women, Republicans, conservatives, Department of Integrity, so incredibly important in politics because a lot of them, Republicans and Democrats, if nobody is looking out at what they're doing, they're going to abuse the system. And I would ask them to put together an independent and autonomous agency funded. This is what the Department of Investigation chairwoman wanted, but the Eric Adams administration said no because most of the investigations would have been against his administration. The mayor should have no role in appointing people who might have to investigate him. Like Andrew Cuomo had his Moreland Commission, remember? They investigated the legislative, the judicial, and then they said, we're going to investigate you, the executive. He said, oh, no, you're not, and he shut it down and almost got indicted by Preet Bharara, a U.S. attorney for the Southern District at that time. No. Mayors need to be investigated. There's good news they always put out, but there's bad news. There needs to be transparency, and the people who pay all the bills have a right to know.
So the next question we have is from Kenny Burgos, the CEO of the New York Apartment Association. And Mr. Burgos asks, affordable housing providers face soaring insurance premiums with little city action. How would you address that?
Well, I'm going back to the Barclays Center because remember you had Ratner and he put together the greatest coalition of all time. And he had as an ally the most radical organizer of all, a woman some of you might recognize, Bertha Lewis, who ran Acorn. and their adversary was Tish James, who was not a Democrat at that time. She was elected Working Families Party, only one to run on that line as city council person. And that whole issue came up. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I know with specificity what to do, but I am going to be convening meetings with the people who are in the industry, the people who monitor the industry, to see how, in fact, we might be able to handle that. You know, I can give you a lot of jargon. I can, give you a lot of mumbo jumbo and waste time, but that's one of the things that I would depend on the experts to deal with.
Sure.
Can we go back to, you mentioned congestion pricing a few minutes ago. You're not a fan, but we know you've met with Kathy Wild, Partnership for New York City, strong supporters of congestion pricing, as are many people in this room. The business community supports it pretty strongly. Do you acknowledge that traffic congestion is a major problem in the business district? How else would you fix it if not through congestion pricing?
Well, everything in government is a first try, as you know. They clip you for 9 now, but it's really intent to clip you for 18, and eventually it's 36. You know that. Already, there's a depleted number of Jersey residents coming in to enjoy the benefits of shopping, going to the theater or restaurant. If Jack Citarelli gets elected, and it's a close election, he is going to retaliate with a commuter tax against people leaving New York. And this is all it does. It accelerates these foolish, ridiculous taxes that do nothing for nobody except put money in the MTA, the money-taking agency that has no fiscal controls, that just keeps spending money like the federal government, like they have a printing press. No, absolutely not. And if you just walk the streets, why are all these small businesses closing? It's very apparent. I've never seen this before, except for back in the draconian days of the late 1970s, when businesses were closing and we were on the brink of fiscal insolvency. That's why I'm saying we may have to have that financial control board taken out of mothballs. I'll probably be cursing up a storm like Ed Koch was, but somebody's got to rein in the spending of government, and somebody's got to cut the taxes, and I'm the only person actually talking about that.
I didn't quite hear a plan for reducing congestion in the business district.
I would join the Trump administration and fight to eliminate that. I think it's bogus. It hasn't raised the money it said it would. $455 million to date, $1 billion of fare evasion, and we're putting money into 3 new train stations on the Q line going from 96 to 125th that nobody wants. We need capital improvement in the existing subway system. We need to employ construction business in retrofitting these enormous office buildings that will never be occupied again. I think we all realize the way you do business, you don't need to have a shingle in New York City. You don't need to lease as much square footage any longer. And so we need to move with rapid ability, give the tax abatements, give the tax breaks, put the men and women to work, and give the developers and the realtors an opportunity to transform all that empty space, which is about 50% from what I see. You go there at night, there are no lights on. It's what used to be in the South Bronx. You knew they were burned out buildings because at night there would be no lights on. And what Ed Koch did, remember how on the Cross Bronx Expressway, he put up paintings that made it appear that people lived there, with little floral arrangements on the windowsill. I don't want to go that route. I was there. I remember how bad it was, and I can see how bad it will be. It's coming down the pipe even before the Zoran flight or the Zoran sales that some of you, the pre-sales that some of you are engaged in.
So staying on transit, Mr. Sliwa, we know that outer borough residents feel underserved by slow buses, limited subway access, and rising tolls. What would you do to improve the situation for those living in the outer boroughs?
Well, first off, the express bus service, which many of your workers take because they live, is horrible. They have an app. It's never right. I've taken the express bus many times, and, I have millennial and Gen Zers who are my campaign aides who travel with me. Oh, got to go to the app, Curtis. Got to go to the app. Well, this is what it said. No, the app. 40 minutes late, 45 minutes. Sometimes they don't even come. No notification from the MTA. They clip you for 7. They're raising that to about $7.50 now with the new fare increases of the MTA. You have to put pressure on the governor, who really doesn't know about mass transit in the city, Kathy Hochul. I mean, she's from Western New York. I'm not faulting her. but that's not her expertise. And more importantly, they're putting up these lithium-ion battery warehouses. Outer boroughs, you know how many in Staten Island? 38. You know how many in Brooklyn? 12. You know how many in Queens? 8. You know how many in the Bronx? 4. You know how many in Manhattan? 0. Why is that? We have additional electricity needs because of Andrew Cuomo taking Indian Point offline and not wanting to use natural gas. You have Local 97 now, the city council, is essentially forcing condo and co-op owners out with a 30% increase in their maintenance fees because now they got to convert. Got to convert from natural gas to an electrical grid. I discussed the problems of artificial intelligence, which is going to double our electricity demands. Nobody's talking about this except for Curtis Sliwa. Have you heard Zoran talk about that? No. Have you heard Andrew Cuomo talk about that? No. Of course, he has nuclear energy stock in his portfolio. $2.5 million its evaluation. This is the guy who took Indian Point offline without a replacement.
So going back to the question, though, how would you improve transit for those in the outer boroughs?
How would I prove what?
How would you improve the transit situation for those living in the outer
Well,
boroughs?
again, the mayor has a limited capacity. You have board members on the MTA, but not substantial enough to outdo the governor and state legislative control. You got to negotiate with them. The subways you have to make safe. That's the one thing you can do, and it's got to be clean. We've got to get the homeless people in to safe shelters. I've been in a third of the 350 shelters that are run by the Department of Homeless Services, some of them MICA shelters for the mentally ill and chemically addicted. They belong in mental health care hospitals. It's Darwinian in the shelters, survival of the fittest, and that's how people end up sleeping in the subways, parks, and streets. You remember that woman, Debrina Kawam? None of you are candidates, Stu. December 22nd, you probably all saw her turned into a human torch in 2024 in Coney Island. She had come over from New Jersey. She had mental health issues. They sent her to an all-women shelter in the Bronx. They took everything she had. She got beaten up. Her sanctuary was the subways. And this migrant that we were putting up in a shelter in East New York, $400 a night, a pyromaniac, set her on fire. Saw her twist in the wind like a melting candle. The police were doing nothing. Everybody was filming it. The migrant got away, eventually to be captured. Do you even hear anything mentioned about Debrina Kawam? One day mentioned, no, we don't want to talk about that. That goes on every day in the shelter system. You make it safe and you get the emotionally disturbed, the help that they need in the state health, mental health hospitals that they have bedding. Creedmoor. Only 30% occupied. Why is Creedmoor 30% occupied? You've probably driven by Creedmoor many times. You can't miss it. There's 70% more space. A lot of it has to be retrofitted. That's how you employ contractors, developers, men and women who have trade skills. There's so much that needs to be improved without having to always want to encroach in people's neighborhoods against their will.
Thank you. This is going to be the last question. You've said that you voted for President Trump. Would you push back, though, as mayor, if he, for example, deployed the National Guard to the city or threatened to freeze funds that were already awarded to New York?
The benefit of being the leader of the Guardian Angels is that I have chapters that I oversee in 13 countries and 130 cities. Many of them are the very cities that are being targeted now. Chicago, Memphis, Baltimore, Portland, all places where I would not have a problem sending National Guardsmen into certain sectors. New York City does not need it. Kathy Hochul already did it in the emergency of subway crime in 2024. Remember, she first had 750 National Guardsmen. Then when Debrina Kawam was burnt alive, she sent an additional 250. That's 1,000 National Guardsmen that were sent into the subway system. So I would say to the president, I would say to his attachés and aides who know New York City, there's no need here. Other places, oh yeah, you can make the case for that. Washington, D.C. was proof positive. But we really don't need it here. What we could use is Kash Patel and the FBI investigating the sex trafficking that brings women in from Asia, Central and South America, and you've seen them in Corona, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Flushing, actually selling their bodies in the streets. Do you think that would be permitted on Sutton Place? You think that would be permitted on Park Avenue? Do you think that would be permitted on Billionaires Row? Of course not. These are absentee landlords. They live in Delray and other parts unknown. They need to be cited. Those buildings need to be taken over. They're madams and pimps. They need to be arrested. The Johns need to be shamed. And we need to give help to these women who are being used and have been brought here sometimes nefariously, and see if they want to go back to their country of origin or get the help that they desperately deserve. But nobody is dealing with that. As mayor, I know where all the bones are buried in these neighborhoods of problems that exist, and I would tell the administration we could use Kash Patel and the FBI to track the narco-terrorists and the sex traffickers who are aiding and abetting this business that is destroying neighborhoods and destroying the women.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curtis Sliwa. Thank you.
My pleasure.